It's Melissa Peters here with DORN Companies, coming to you pain-free live to help you live pain and injury-free. Thanks for tuning in today for another episode of the Injury Prevention Academy, brought to you by DORN Companies, the country's leading wellness-based pain management and injury prevention company, committed to reducing costs of healthcare, workers' compensation, and lost productivity, resulting in over $100 million in savings over the last 20 years for our clients. Joining us today is Jeffrey Hayzlett, who is a primetime television host of C-Suite with Jeffrey Hayzlett and Executive Perspectives on C-Suite TV, and business podcast host of All Business with Jeffrey Hayzlett on C-Suite Radio. He is a global business celebrity, speaker, best-selling author, and chairman of C-Suite Network, home of the world's most trusted network of C-Suite leaders. He is a turnaround architect of the highest order, a maverick marketer and C-suite executive who delivers scalable campaigns, embraces traditional modes of customer engagement, and possesses a remarkable cachet of mentorship, corporate governance, and brand building. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jeffrey. How's it going over there?
It's doing great. I thank you for having me. And I love the pain-free. Everyone would like to be pain-free, you know? That's awesome. That's an awesome tagline for your brand.
Thank you. It was something that came to me and I've kind of just went with it. And thank you for the kudos, because that means a lot.
Well, I mean, when people, a lot of people don't know to do that. You know, I'm a marketer. I've been a marketer for years and actually been pretty good at it. And so, you know, I'm able to really get down to what your real message is. And that gets to the core of what your real message, what the value that you give. And I think that's important to be able to do.
It sure does. Our tagline in all of our emails is live pain-free. So I'm like, pain-free live. It's just a little bit of a turnaround. So thank you for that.
And a lot better. You know, I once saw a sign that said Johnson's Taxidermy and Veterinary Service. And then the tagline was, one way or another, you get your dog back. And that's, you know, so I think yours is much better. I think yours is much better.
That was not bad, though. So Jeffrey, to start off with, I know in 2018 you had your fourth book come out, which congratulations.
Thank you.
The Hero Factor came out, which discusses the importance of a strong company culture that's based on great mission and vision statements and deeply ingrained values as the backbone of a successful business. What was your motivation for writing this book?
Well, it comes from way back in 1996. A gentleman by the name of Rob Ryan sold his company. And when he sold his company for $20.4 billion, he and his wife, who was the chief legal officer at the time, decided to give away a portion of the company back to the employees. They didn't need to do that. They just decided to do that. And when they did so, they created the biggest and largest number of millionaires ever created in one day. And all these employees would run up to him and say, well, you don't know me, but I'm the night watchman and I could send my kids to college, or I'm the security guard and my mother-in-law doesn't have health insurance and she's got cancer and I can pay for the operation she's going to live. And they would keep yelling back to the Ryans that, hey, you're our hero, you're my hero. And they didn't intend to do that. They just were trying to do the right thing. But they started to help other businesses do what they were doing. And that is to lead companies putting people above profits. And that was a pretty unique thing at the time, and still is, quite frankly, for a lot of businesses today. And so as a result, we found out there was a hero factor in this, you know, that there were people who were out there living values, putting values first, putting certain things like safety and other things with their employees at the forefront. And in doing so, what did they find? Well, they found out that the employees were happier. Okay, that the customers were more engaged. They found out that they grossed more money than anyone else in the industry. They made more money than anyone else in the industry. Vendors wanted to do business with them. And when they walked through the community, people would recognize them as a hero business. And so that's something I think all business should strive for. And I think we're at a time in our history where we need to focus more on just the top or the bottom line and more on what we want to do and how we want to do it. And so that's what the Hero Factor book's all about, is to say what's important in our lives, what's important in our businesses, what's important in our community, in our world. How are we all connected? And then how do we go forth in doing the right thing for the right reasons? And that's really what the hero factor is all about.
Barring sounding a little cynical on my side, culture and values are thrown around a lot. They're buzzwords.
Yeah.
What is a culture and what is a value? Kind of going to the very heart of what this is.
Yeah, well, values are inside of culture, and culture itself is who are you, and it's made up of a lot of different things, right? It's made up of the mood, but mostly it's made up of people. And your culture and the way in which you operate as a company or as a society, that's what culture is, right? And it takes a long time for culture to develop, but values you can put at the forefront, and then that will help to lead the culture where you want it to go and doesn't replace it, but certainly helps to lead it. And it's something you live inside of. It's our moral culture of who we are and what we want to be. And that value's at the forefront. Today, 56 or 58% of the employees that work in companies don't know what the values of their company are. That says something. If you don't know how your boss or how your coworker is going to react to, I don't know, a safety issue, a quality issue, a customer service issue, a billing issue, you got a freaking problem, folks. Okay, you got a basic, that's not being cynical, that's being realistic. And so values separate us from everyone, but the culture is important. The cultures, but culture is, there was a saying, culture eats strategy for lunch, and that's it. If you believe your best days are behind you, your best days are behind you. That's part of your culture. You believe in a losing culture, that's not good. And there's not much you can do to change it unless you change out the people and you change out the values.
Understood. So, a lot of our listeners are in the safety arena, obviously, and
Yep.
they're often tasked with the goal of creating an effective safety culture. How can they apply what you discuss in the hero factors, such as radical transparency and the importance of having everyone invested in the culture, to this field of safety?
Well, let's take first of all getting everyone invested. Everyone's got to drink the Kool-Aid, get on the bandwagon, drink the champagne, whatever you want. I typically say drink the Kool-Aid. If not everybody believes safety is important, you're only as good as your lowest common denominator because they're going to screw up. But if everybody believes safety is important, and when we see something that's out of line, stop the presses, stop the machinery, stop what you're doing. Everybody address this. Someone could slip, someone could fall, someone could, don't take the red flag off of this because someone's inside that machine or got their hands inside that machine, and you don't want them to turn on this electrical outlet, because they went by and said, oh, it's off. So if you don't have those things ingrained and you don't believe that and you don't drink that Kool-Aid and live it every minute of the day, that's an issue. That's an issue. So first thing you have to do is that. And I've always found that it's typically the rule of thirds. A third get it right away. A third eventually get it, and a third never do. So what you have to do is then start to practice radical transparency, which means everybody knows, the third does not. We're going to address that because you can only move as fast as your slowest common denominator or as your weakest links. And so you're going to either have to educate and train to move them, but typically you can't. You can't in culture. You can't train that out of them. You're going to have to look for people over time that you're going to replace to get the right kinds of people who care and have the same values that you have. You can't have in your family someone who goes with it and then other people who don't. It doesn't work. Everybody's got to be in the family, and so that's an important part of what you have to do. And I learned safety through various jobs. I've always been in marketing and sales, but as you move up the ranks, as I've done, and of course you're CEO of your company, I worked for your CEO at one time, and I moved up the ranks in that company as well. But I learned a lot from him on safety, and I learned a lot because our in that particular company, we were in a label and a forms company inside of a larger printing company. And then I got to move around in the bigger printing company, which was $1 billion company at the time, or almost, no, $2 billion. And I learned a great deal about safety in printing presses, around printing facilities. And then I went on to become chief marketing officer of Eastman Kodak. And I can guarantee you safety was at our forefront in all of our plants. And so we always had safety meetings. We always went over things. If you had to wear glasses, you wore glasses, even when you thought you were kind of goofy. and because that's not something I would normally wear on my daily thing. But I used to have a pair of my own glasses, and I would walk in a plant. First thing I would do is put those on as I walked through the front door. So I led by example. And these are the things you are. If I had to have a hard hat, I had my own hard hat, brought that with me all the time, put that hard hat on. If we wore safety vests, because that was in some of our plants, that's what we did. I wore that safety vest. And even if we had to wear steel-toed shoes, and I'm an executive now, I wear cowboy boots. All right, cowboy boots. So I had to go get myself some steel-toed cowboy boots so that I could wear those cowboy boots when I was walking the plant floors or doing plant visits or employee visits, which I did on a regular basis. And that's culture. All right, that's putting values inside of culture and saying we're going to do it. And when I didn't do it, someone should be transparent enough to say, hey, executive, what the heck do you think you're doing? You can't be in this facility and not have these things on. And that's the kind of stuff you need to be able to have in an organization. And I mean, call it out from the bottom to the top. And I've been called out before. Trust me. I thought, well, I'm the CMO. I don't have to do this every once in a while, or think I can just get by with it this one time. Can't do that. And that's kind of value you have to have and transparency you have to have inside an organization. So the value is everyone needs to do it. Everyone, 100%. Otherwise that 365 days of non-consecutive, no accident days becomes zero pretty quick when one person makes a mistake. And you don't want that. Nobody wants that. No one wants to see an employee or coworker injured in any way, shape, or form. And so that was ingrained into me and today, even in my own operations where I don't have plants, I don't have facilities that were, most people, the most they could get hurt's a paper cut. Okay. But we practice safety. We talk about, how to exit the building, what happened to do if there's a tornado. What happened, what do we need to do if there's an intrusion, a visitor who's come in, and things like that. And by the way, I've had all of those situations in my career where, at one place where former employee came back in, shot one of the most popular people in the plant, went looking for the plant manager, set the place on fire, and then shot himself when the SWAT team showed up. So, I had that dramatic of piece to employees who have fallen off of ladders and have died. And I mean, a whole host of, you have that in a variety of things sometimes when you have massive employees, like, we had 185,000 employees at one time. And so when with multiple plants everywhere, so you do get some of that, but it kills you, it crushes you. It's the worst thing in the world you can have happen.
Yes, and I think that's where something like radical transparency becomes so critical. A lot of major safety leaders and professionals that I've spoken to, when they have seen their programs really take off, is when they start doing things like find it, fix it approaches, where instead of it being silence is the mode that, we can sweep that under the rug, we can pretend that didn't happen. At the end of the day, that comes back to bite you. Versus having this forefront and focus on, we're going to admit and talk about issues, over communicate, do what we need to do to ensure that everyone is on board and we are in this as a unit together.
Yep, that's drinking that Kool-Aid, getting on the bandwagon, drinking the champagne, whatever you want to do. But it's got to become part of your standard operating procedures, got to become part of who you are, and report it. And when I say report it or celebrate it, where you're putting it in the forefront, you're talking about it all the time. You put it, you make an announcement you make a big announcement with the team. Maybe you got an email that goes out every day. When I was at Eastman Kodak, I put the safety index up on our internal website that we used to have. We used to call them I think Kodak yellow pages, because our logo was like your shirt, it was yellow. And so yellow and red, that's what we were, almost like a cautionary thing. It's kind of an interesting piece to think about that. But we put the safety index, and we list what plants were doing the best and where we had red flags so that people knew we had red flags. when we did have, you can almost imagine we had, worldwide, we would have accidents. Maybe it was in China, maybe it was in Argentina, maybe it was in Venezuela. And we would actually report those and then say, here's what you should do to make sure that this doesn't happen again. So we did that across the entire company, so that, and not everybody on the line, meaning in the plants, had access to that, because not everybody has internet access, down in the plant level. But what that did do, and someone said, well, why do we put that in there? I said, because you as an office worker should know what your plant guys are doing or gals are doing for you. And you should understand the kind of the labor that they're doing and understand this happens to them and what can you do to help them? And I said, well, maybe I can't. I said, well, sometimes it might be just saying a little thing or paying attention at the next safety meeting, or fire drill or whatever we might have. And that will help, because it's important, because look what's up there in that corner. We had an accident. That's not good.
Yes, and so I heard you even mention earlier, of course, we want to avoid those injuries. And a lot of times, though, when I have spoken to companies that truly have an effective safety culture, it's because, they're not just measuring safety success based upon hardline metrics like injury rates. Just like I know you speak about businesses going beyond looking at operational excellence and profit margins to building a winning culture. Instead, safety programs can be measured by, are we aligning what we're doing with the cultural values of our company? Are we making sure that we're listening to the advice of employees? So when it comes to metrics and looking at outcomes to know whether you're building a successful culture, how does this relate to topics you've covered in the hero factor as well as what you've seen in your own career?
Well, I like things like having direct access to the CEO or to an officer in the company, so that anyone knows that they can pick up the phone, send an email, or stop into the office and say, hey, we got an issue, whatever it is, or I have a concern, or I have an idea. And because ideas don't come, the best things in companies don't come from top down. They come from bottom up. They come from everywhere. And so we're learning how to do that better in terms of companies. And I think that's an important piece of it. The other thing is, I think you have to have regular dialogue, Melissa, where you're sitting down as a team. And so that you're not stuck in the C-suite ivory tower as a leader. You're out walking around. And I'm a real believer. We had cafeterias. I used to go around to every day eat in a different cafeteria in a different building, just so I could be visible with anyone, and everyone knew that they could come and sit down with me. I didn't care who it was, come sit down. Or I would walk up to a table where there was 6 men or 6 women or a mix of people that I never knew, and said, hey, I'm Jeff Hayzlett, I'm Chief Marketing Officer, you mind if I sit with you for lunch? And I would just do that. Which was, by the way, unheard of with a lot of companies that I've been in. And as you can probably imagine, with tens of thousands of employees, there used to be executive dining rooms. Well, I did away with that crap, because we don't need that. We just need one dining room. What's the difference? I don't understand that. And maybe we need a place where we got to take some customers and clients, things like that, from time to time, but we really don't need anything that's more fancier than that, just a room or something. But nonetheless, I think it's important for you. And I think it's important to really have those town hall meetings that are plant meetings. We'd always have a plant meeting when I would go. We would always go do those kinds of things so people could bring in you. It was amazing, the kind of dialogue, feedback that you get. And sometimes some people are a little pissed off, but sometimes they're a little boisterous in terms of their thing. But that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. That's healthy debate. Healthy debate's a good thing. Tension inside a company, healthy tension's good, because it gets us where we want to go. And you have to have a culture that says, we allow for that. I want that. I want you to be able to come and push, certainly as a CEO, I do that today. I want my team to come to me and say, this isn't right. Can we do something different? Can we, this is my idea. Or at least let's have the understanding why that won't work. And let's talk about what can we do to get there? Because I don't think anyone inside of a company wakes up and says, I can't wait to be stupid. All right. And from the top to across the entire company, I don't think anyone does that. And though, but well, maybe every once in a while there's somebody, but we get rid of those folks pretty quick, or they get voted out by the board of directors fairly quickly. But nonetheless, most people want to do the right thing, and I think that's what's important. And that's what we cover in the Hero Club. We also cover things like diversity and inclusion, how important that is for us. Not just in terms of color or sex or race or creed or geography, but also of thought. We need diversity and inclusion of thought, and we need to make sure that, as leaders, those that are listening, that you're calling on people who aren't always as vocal as the other folks. And so we have to go out of our way to go out to that corner in the room and say, I haven't heard from you yet. What's your thought? Because those are usually the best ones, because they're the folks that are sitting back there with their arms crossed going, another corporate meeting. We got to sit through this crap, blah, blah, blah. And then, but they'll say, I just wish you'd fix this. Boom, and I can't tell you the number of times that we had that. I remember one time we were in a meeting and I found out we had weapons grade plutonium in our building. Like, what? We were at the end of a meeting, one of those guys in the corner, I said, I haven't heard from you. And he said, I just wish somebody would do something about this uranium, blah, blah, blah. And I, what? And then I made everybody clear the meeting, and he told me that we had weapons grade uranium. I'm thinking, why do we have weapons grade uranium? Well, back in the 40s and 50s, we had to help the government to sneak little cameras into Russian facilities where they were building bombs, and they had to take pictures of those facilities, these spies. Well, I don't know if you know this, but radiation will ruin film. That's why you can't put it through an X-ray machine. So back in those days, we had to create film that would withstand the radiation emitted by weapons grade uranium. So there you go. And yet this stuff was still laying around. Now that's a safety issue. And we had to contact the government to come and get it. Because what happens when you downsize and downsize and downsize and you change people over time, people forget where stuff is at. And they forget where it's stored. They forget where the safety valve is, or they don't know this or don't know that. If you don't do enough of the training that people that you need to be able to do. And so things like that, unfortunately, fall through the cracks. And there's a great story, if you ever want to look it up, folks, that you can look up the day that the U.S. Army came in and under the cover of darkness, came and got some uranium out of the Kodak research facility. True story.
I'm definitely going to look that up.
True story. True story.
I'm very glad you brought up the C-suite and CEOs and executive leaders, because I will say a lot of EHS professionals that I speak with, sometimes they're like, well, my leadership team isn't interested, or they're not listening to me when I'm talking about communicating safety. And, it falls on them to convince the hierarchy that be of the importance and benefits of safety. So what advice do you have for safety leaders who are looking to increase their ability to influence executive leadership and gain their support?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking. It's really by showing value. Listen, each officer of the company, and I was one of the 4 or 5 officers that we had at a company and many other companies. Each one has their own conditions of satisfaction that they have to run up the ladder. Each one of them has to deliver on certain promises for the company, greater revenue, greater profit lines, bigger brand awareness, whatever it might. Each one has their own thing. Well, as a safety officer, I would want to engage with those C-suite leaders and talk about what are their promises to the company and how safety relates to that promise and why it's important. Because it has a top line, bottom line, and it has a mood component to it. And I'm sure many more, you're much better at this than I, but it has a mood component that if you're not taking care of people, then you're going to have people who are getting bad attitudes and bad moods, and the productivity goes down. Therefore, you got bigger mistakes that are on the products that you're shipping out, or accidents occur that are going to cost you. You're going to have workers' comp claims that are going to go up, whatever it is. And nobody wants that. So what you need to do is sit down and talk about your promises to the company and how they relate to my promises, because I want to know that. And you might think, well, what's a marketing guy care about that? Well, I just went through and told you that if you're not producing great products because the mood's down, because we're not taking care of the people that we have in our operation, then the product's going to be kind of shitty. And I don't know about you, but I don't like selling shitty products. Okay, period. Nobody does. So sorry, I probably shouldn't use this kind of language, but that's how I talk. This is how we talk in the C-suite, at least
Yeah.
my. So that's what I would do. And you have to be very clear about here's the value this has to our company. And you show me the value, game on. I'm your biggest cheerleader. I'll be behind you, waving flags, carrying this, carrying the safety charts, doing whatever you need to do because I know there's value there. And it was people like your boss, your CEO, Kevin Lombardo, at your company who taught me some of those things. And the person that he reported to, and I eventually also reported to, that also taught us that. And he was, I can remember him to this day. Jeffrey, put those glasses on, and things like, and I was like, that's where I learned the basic safeties. And you learn that through great experts who practice it and live it every single day.
On a broader level, for people out there who are looking to increase their ability to be an influencer, do you have, like a top 3 tips or just kind of where to start to find your voice in order to influence an organizational structure?
Yeah. Number one, done is better than perfect. So many times we as leaders or those that want to become thought leaders or those that want to do a good job at anything, try to wait until it's perfect. Don't wait until it's perfect. Done is better than perfect, but once done, move to perfect. So get better and proficient at it. But the first thing is get in and figure it out. The second thing is to capture customer behavior. So as a thought leader, as you want to communicate inside your organization, what is it they listen to, read, watch, do? How do they get their information? And then put it inside that channel where you might say, oh, we've got to build a Facebook page, or we've got to build a LinkedIn page, or we've got to do an internal page. Well, if they don't do it, they're not going to do it just because you do it. So you've got to be able to capture behavior. And then last but not least, my third one is try it. And then if it doesn't work, try something else until it does work. And once you start getting it to work, step and repeat that process. Right? That's really, truly the things to do. It's really that simple. I was one of the very first 1,000 people on Twitter. Now I have 600,000 Twitter fans. I have like 300,000 or 400,000 on LinkedIn, and Facebook, not so many because that's not my business. A lot of business people aren't necessarily getting their stuff on Facebook, but nonetheless, I still have about 50,000 there. So you can be an influencer, but more importantly, to be a thought leader is you're going to have to lead. And by the way, to be a thought leader, there's a couple of things. As a thought leader, you're going to want to be quoted. So you're going to want to start to give good information so enough people are quoting you or citing you. Because what would be great is someone stands up, well, I just heard from the safety director, or I just heard from so-and-so, or I just heard from this person. And that being you want that to happen. Why? Because that means you're giving information that others want to hear. Second is you want to create tension. Thought leaders have to have some haters. All right. Now, you might not like that, but that's indeed the case. Because if you're not pushing the envelope to where people are going, you crazy lady, okay? Or, you're full of crap, okay? But that gets that debate going, and you want to be able to have that. And then last but not least, you got to be authentic. You can't just, start taking Instagram pictures and Facebook posts and acting like you're safety. You're going to have to be safety. It's going to have to ooze in every pore of your body. And people will smell you out if you're not doing what you need to be doing. And again, you're only as good as your last post. So make it good, make it right. Someone once asked me, Jeff, how do you be like I've been in 5 business Hall of Fames, and somebody was asking me, my last one was a speaking Hall of Fame. And they said, how do you get to be a great speaker? I said, be great, be good. And that's what you're going to have to do as a thought leader. You're going to have to be good. And be at the that's what it means. You're leading that particular area. So that's my advice.
And I want to go back a little bit. When you mentioned about being influential sometimes is demonstrating value, one of the things I've heard safety leaders tell me is their challenge is showing the value of keeping something from happening. So you have to demonstrate that, well, you're investing in it to keep something that might or might not happen from happening. Can you speak to that challenge?
Yeah, I mean, so every business plan is built on the following: SWOT analysis: strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats. Okay? And if you don't, the biggest job that a C-suite has is strategy. Okay? We're not the smartest people in the room. We're not. Truly not. There's people that are a lot smarter in the operation than we are. We're just good at the things that we do, and our job is to be the most strategic. Help me be strategic. Show me what the value of that threat or of that problem is going to be. Let's imagine that we had a catastrophic accident. Let's imagine we have a caustic chemical that we have, and it breaks loose off of the scaffolding that we have where we got it stored, and this one fell off at the same time. They mixed together and created a noxious gas that not only went through the plant, but now has gone into the entire community. And let me tell you that this particular chemical combined is one of the most poisonous gases there are in the world. This I'm going to the extreme, but this could happen and has happened, right, in certain kinds of plants. And this cloud now moves with a southwesterly direction of a wind, and that's an elementary school that's a quarter of a mile away. Here are the death losses. Here's what's projected. Now, you don't think I'll pay attention to that? Of course I would. So what you want to do is to now show me what we're doing to prevent this, and how easy kind of thing of Jimmy knocking this off of with the forklift and picked it up, rather than those chemicals should never be stored like that. And because of its volatility with this other one, shouldn't be stored anywhere near that. And the fact that we have done this, we may prevent this. And I want to know that. I want to know that. You know why? Because my grandkids go to that school. Right? So tell it in that way and show me the value that way. I get that. That's what we should be doing, right? Because we do deal with things, especially in manufacturing and the things that some of us do. We do deal with things that are not pretty. We do deal with things that are dangerous. We do have that. And you know, whether you're in a construction field or manufacturing or you know, healthcare, there's a lot of things that we have to take in consideration that we want to keep in mind. And you know, we also want to talk about how to keep our people safe, you know, in terms of outside influences, things that are going on. I mean, you can't ignore the economic downturn that we're facing, with the biggest, you know, blatant racism and violence that we've seen ever in any of most of our lifetime. All right, some of us have seen it before, but not everybody has. These are things that we, you know, what would happen if your plant was you know, overrun by protesters or whatever it might be. You have to keep those in mind, or a lone gunman, or you know, that's the world that we live in, and that's, you know, this has been around for hundreds of years, and it's not likely to go away anytime soon. So we need to be able to talk about those things.
Yes, and I mean, let's face it, even now we're living in a global pandemic time. That was certainly
Right.
something that a lot of people found, oh my goodness,
Right.
we have to prepare for this now. Which, speaking of what's going on right now with COVID, a lot of people are working remotely. I know, you know, some have their corporate leadership teams at home. What advice do you have out there for leaders and executives who are giving their support virtually right now and in sustaining that effective winning cultures, even
Well,
in the midst of something like COVID-19?
well, we have to talk about now how your workplace is extended into your home and what you have to do to protect yourself there now, because you're working from home. So I can't have you moving desks by yourself. I can't have you going outside. I want you to be careful about climbing up on the ladder and doing this or whatever it might be. I'm concerned about that, because it's different when you're only home for the weekends for the most part. Now you're home 5 days a week, and so you got an extra hour. I'm going to go out and mow the lawn or something real quick, you know. So you want to be able to have those kinds of conversations. Now, the biggest thing I think for most people right now in that employers are worried about with employees or the team is their mental health. And because you can sense it, I can sense it pretty heavy. People are getting a little very apprehensive. Some people getting scared. Some people are getting depressed. Their suicides are up, all these kinds of things. So what we have done in our own operations, we have these check-in meetings. So we have all hands on deck twice a week. We decide who's going to lead the meeting. We do a gratitude day. We do one day is an update with the education. The other day is a gratitude day. Talk about who you're grateful for, and it could be family, friends. It could be a coworker. Typically, it's a lot of coworker stuff and family. All right. And then we do a team building activity, and we learn different things. Like ours yesterday was, what's the favorite thing that you like about fall? So we found some people who are just, I mean, batshit crazy about pumpkins. And it was scary. It was a little scary. It was a little scary, and orange. They liked orange. There was two people in particular we're gonna have to keep an eye on. But nonetheless, they're just, I mean, it's just way too soon for pumpkin stuff right now. I'm just telling you that just
I'm
there's
not
a
a
lot.
pumpkin fan myself.
Yeah, well, they are. Trust me, they're zealots. It's nuts. Like I said, we're going to keep an eye on it, nonetheless. But that's what that's something you could be doing right now. And then what we're also doing is checking in on people. A little bit more. If they were at their desk, they're around people, they're socializing, and now they're not. They're cocooned in their home with their cat and headphones and on the couch, and we need to help break some of that cycle up a little bit and help them and just check in with them and make sure they know we're watching, not so much that we're watching like a big brother, but we care. And I think that's the important piece that you have to be able to do.
Well, thank you, Jeffrey, so much for that and for your time joining me today and the wisdom that you shared. And of course, we appreciate all you out there who took the time to listen or tune in and view us today, and hope you gained something useful, and look forward for you tuning in to the next episode. Thank you so much, Jeffrey.
My pleasure.